Notion and Anki are two of my favorite productivity apps as a medical student, and in this video, I'll show you how I integrate both of them by turning my Notion notes into Anki cards. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Luis. I'm a third-year medical student from the Philippines, and Anki has always been an integral part of my study process ever since I started using it in my first year of medical school. However, while using Anki, I always struggled with creating cards that would connect well with different concepts I'd learned in the lesson. And this is something in general that Anki struggles with, in that it's not really ideal for helping you learn the bigger picture. This all changed when I discovered Notion and the ability to create active recall questions using the toggle feature. By using it, I could create my active recall questions same as Anki, but I could still access my other notes and still have a general idea of the bigger concept of the lesson. However, Notion doesn't have a built-in spaced repetition algorithm like Anki, so it's not necessarily ideal when you're reviewing for a long term. I initially tried to circumvent this problem by copy and pasting my notes from Notion to Anki, but I found that this was very tedious and created a lot of friction in my workflow, so I decided to scrap it altogether. Thankfully, while I was browsing Reddit one day, I came across this website that allows you to convert your Notion notes into Anki cards, and immediately I tried to figure out a way to integrate this into my workflow. So normally while watching the recorded lecture or looking through the slides, I will have that on one half of the screen, and on the other half, I'll have Notion open where I'll be making active recall questions as I go along, and taking the relevant screenshots for those active recall questions that I make. So I'm going to show you the general workflow from creating the active recall questions on Notion to converting them to Anki cards. So here, we're on my Notion page for my head and neck module, and you can see here I've divided the module page into headers according to the quizzes that I'll be having. So I'll be having 5 quizzes, and under each header I place the different lecture topics that will be covered for each quiz. So if I were to say study for quiz 4 here, I'd create a Notion page, and let's just say here sample lecture. So within the lecture notes, I would divide the lecture into the main ideas that would be covered within the lecture itself. So let's start here. So under each main idea, that's a time I would put a toggle underneath, and the toggle would serve as the question that I would create. So the nice thing about the Notion to Anki converter is that it can create both close deletion and your basic front and back card. So to create the simple front and back card, you can just use the toggle feature and just write the question on top. So what is the powerhouse of the cell as a sample, and then underneath I can put the answer. So that's mitochondria. So when I go to convert this, the question that will be shown in front is what is ever at the top of the toggle, and what is ever underneath the toggle is what's going to appear as the answer. So if you want to create a closed deletion, the thing that you do is that you can just write the same idea again, so in the sentence, so like mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And how you tell the Notion to Anki converter that you want to create a closed deletion is that you highlight the text that you want to turn into a close and you press Command E. This turns the text into a link within the Notion page, and this is what tells the program, Notion to Anki, to convert it into a closed deletion card once you convert it in the web page. So then the toggle, once you expose what's underneath, this is where you can add your extra notes. You can just add whatever you want, like it is an organ. And this is the portion of the card that will appear after you reveal the closed deletion portion of the card. So I will show you one of my sample lectures. So here you can see my Notion page for the nasal obstruction lecture, and as you can saw with my sample note, I divided it into 2 based on the main ideas that were discussed in the lecture. So first header here is about allergic rhinitis and acute rhinosinusitis. I could divide this further if I had a lot of toggle questions into like the pathophysiology, the symptoms, and the management, but since I don't have too many questions, I just kept it based on the disease. And as you can see here, I've written my active recall questions down below, and you can see that if I toggle each, you can see the answers to each of these questions. And if I scroll down, like you can see that I've even added pictures to some of them, and these are just basically screenshots in the lecture to help give me further context on what the topic is about. Before you export the Notion page, you have to make sure that you've gone through all the cards. Sometimes you make too general of a question, such as like, describe the process of photosynthesis, and that's quite vague. That's not a very good active recall question. So you want to make it as specific as possible so that you're actually trying to elicit the proper information that they would probably ask you in the exam. And also, you'd also want to check for spelling mistakes. So such as here, I misspelled from and wrote form, so I'll correct that. Going through it is, I think I'm ready, good to go. And you don't have to worry so much about the other text that you have on the page, because what I've seen some other people do is that they create a separate page and drag all the questions there. But I've found that you don't really need to do that, since Notion to Anki is already programmed to only convert anything that is already a toggle. So if there are like headers and other text on the page, as long as it's not a toggle, it won't convert it. So something you want to avoid is having toggles within toggles. So if I have here a toggle and then I put something underneath and write another toggle, that will mess up the program. So you want to make sure that you don't have toggles within toggles. So now that we're ready to export, I'm going to export this page as an HTML. You select the format as HTML, and then use export. So let's rename this to Rhino Cite this, and it will export to my downloads folder. So once the Notion page is exported, you can go to this website here, to Anki.net, and you'll appear here on this landing page where you can upload the zip file. So you can see here, it's in my downloads folder, so rhinosinusitis. You upload it there. Before you convert the file, you actually have the option to make some changes. So you can change the template, font size. You can also change the deck name. So you can see here, Rhino. You can change it to Rhinosinusitis, so that once you do export and download the file, so that it already have a name once you export it. And then you can also have other toggles that the converter gives you, but that's too advanced for the purposes of this video, so I'll just keep it as basic front and back and close deletion. So going here, you can press convert, and it'll take a while to convert the Notion page into the Anki deck. So depending on the size of the deck that you're making, you may want to account for the amount of time that may take. But since it's a short deck, it's already done here, so we can select download, and the Anki deck just downloaded into my downloads folder, so let's open that. So as you can see here, the deck that we've just exported is now in my Anki page. So opening it, so here we get the question like, what inflammatory mechanism, and the answer here is type 1. So as you can see here, the card that I showed earlier in my Notion page converted easily to a front and back basic card on Anki, and it shows all the information that is also included in my Notion page. And just to show the close deletion feature of converting Notion to Anki, you can see here the close deletion that we created in the sample Notion page, and mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, where here you can see that mitochondria is the closed card. So if you reveal, it shows mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You can see the extra portion that we included. So the downside of the Notion to Anki converter is that it doesn't really know if you're making the type of card where you want two close deletions at once. So like here, I made two close deletions originally, like mitochondria and the powerhouse, but it will consider those two separate closes once it converts to C1 and C2. So that's why we have here a second card where mitochondria is the blank of the cell. So if you do want to create a card with multiple closes, like one card where you have to two simultaneously close deletion items, you have to do it manually after you convert it, and manually just convert the C into C, like C2, C3 into the respective numbers. And that's not really that hard to do, but something to take note of when you do create your Anki cards. So I hope you found these tips helpful, and if you want to learn more on how I use Notion and Anki for medical school, check out this playlist here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.